Hey guys, this is Joey T from the Cartoon.P, and I just wanted to go ahead and talk about one of the most anticipated movies I've wanted to see this whole year. I had a chance to see it this weekend, and I just have to share my thoughts. That movie in question is Sausage Party. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I was looking forward to seeing the talking sausage movie, the talking hot dog movie this whole year. Well, bear with me, guys, because not only is this one of my favorite animated movies this year, I have to say this is a good opportunity for animated films in the US to reach a standard we haven't hit. And even though some might argue those standards in this film are kind of low because it talks a lot about raunch and it talks a lot, it had characters are cursing left and right and it deals with a lot of smut. There's something about this film and its honesty and its appeal that makes it very entertaining to watch. It's a whole lot smarter than it puts it out to be. This was anticipated because I've been a fan of Seth Rogen's movies for a while. I want to say as long as Superbad. I really feel like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, they have a passion for movies and interjecting the things they love to do, which, truth be told, is probably getting high every once in a while, and applying it to these fun movies. And every once in a while, they do a genre bender. To This Is the End was a good apocalypse movie as much as it was a good stoner comedy. And you could even say that with The Interview, which really harked back to those old propaganda films from the World War II, but in this case with North Korea. And the fact that movie almost started a whole new war, that's fascinating in itself. Sausage Party, on the other hand, as you may know, why else do I have this channel? So I could talk about animated movies. This is an animated film that's R-rated, dealing with stuff that we don't see in a lot of animated movies today. Honestly, this movie's very comparable to the South Park movie that came out almost like over 20 years ago. And the fact that it's taken us like 20 years later to come up with another movie like South Park is fascinating. There were attempts, we've tried, but nothing nearly as raunchy, smart, a good blend between adult humor and animation put together in one. And the fact that this movie did it is, I give it credit. It makes me happy to know that in my lifetime we can see another movie like that, and I can only hope we see more movies like that. Well, enough talking about the impact of this film. What is it about? So, this movie takes the Pixar approach, which is you take characters and what their feelings are. Like, okay, what would happen if toys had feeling? What would happen if bugs have feeling? What would happen if cars have feelings? What if feelings had feelings? And in this case, this movie talks about what would happen if food have feelings. And if you really get down to it, it would be pretty messed up. Because what do we do with food? We eat them. And they don't know that. And then you have this interesting discussion of ideology and this belief that once the food leaves the supermarket, they go into this great paradise, this Valhalla type paradise known as the Great Beyond. It's pretty interesting and fascinating in the way they talk about it. And the character Frank, he's a hot dog. Ha ha, his name is Frank, his last name Footer, whatever. And they call them sausages throughout this whole movie. They're hot dogs, but they keep calling them sausages just for the sake of this joke. Let's just put it that way. They want to make dick jokes, and they're calling them sausages for the sake of that. And he has a crush on a bun. Well, why else? So they want to go to the Great Beyond with all of his friends and all that fun stuff in a typical Disney-like manner. You see like great big opening song. You notice this movie takes the detour once they start interjecting the F-bombs here and there, which I'll be honest with you, I've had a little bit of a gripe with. I guess I hate making comparisons to South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut, but when that movie started, it had a big musical number and it talked about, childlike innocence and how great children are, and then a child walking into an R-rated movie, and then right when that happens, that's when you hear the first F-bomb landed. And for most people who watch South Park, we heard, people curse, because it was aired late at night, and you heard shit. Excuse my language. It was at that point, it was very shocking to hear a character go that far without the censor. And the same thing applied to Always Sunny. The first time I ever heard the F-bomb landed in Always Sunny in Philadelphia had such an impact because we haven't heard those characters land the F bomb, and it was in the Christmas special. And when I won't say what that moment was, but when it does happen, it really hits you. Whereas when characters start cursing, I guess it doesn't really hit you. And there wasn't really a moment where something really just like outright just smacked you in the face with how blatant and raunchy it was. I felt like it kind of like led you into it, smoothed it out. I felt like if it had more of a direct impact, like the closest they had to that. Each food in the supermarket has their own ideology, has their own nationality, which leads to a lot of racist humor. So they talk about sauerkraut and German food. And the German food, they are seeing themselves as a master race. Their leader looks like Hitler and they want to get rid of all the Jews. And when that moment happened, a lot of people were like shocked. You heard a couple of in the movie theater and like a lot of laughs because like they just cut right to the Jews looking at them like, what? It was interesting, it was funny, and they had little couple moments like that, especially near the end, which I will get to in a little bit. This is a no spoiler review anyway, so I'm not really going to spoil a lot in this. So, where was I going? Characters want to go to the great beyond, and then something happens where the character does go outside, comes back in, and realizes that this great beyond was just an illusion put to make people believe in the harsh reality of life, which is you die and get consumed, which I feel like that leads to another criticism because most of the trailers indicated that half of this would take place outside the supermarket and half of this would take place in the supermarket. Whereas I always had the impression that this movie should have been a combination of those. But when you do deal with the characters in the supermarket, they go on their adventure trying to get back to their aisle when they fall out of a cart, which is Frank and Brenda, the bun that he has a crush on, with some other fun characters, aka fun stereotypes that, whatever. And they go to find their aisle, and then they spend most of the time trying to get back to their aisle. And then it isn't until like after Frank realizes that Bill Hader's character, who plays a racist stereotype of a Native American, which leads to another great joke with Craig Robinson's character, which is a box of grits, which originally was supposed to be a box of rice, which was a parody of Uncle Ben's, but calling it Uncle Tom's. But kind of glad they didn't go with that either way. And you almost feel like you spend all this time setting up what the world is like and what people perceive. I feel like it would have been so much funnier if the realization that they were food happened before Frank finds out the truth from the Bill Hader character, whereas it was kind of a combination. Like, I can almost imagine it like this. Frank is captured by these characters, and then before they tell him what the great reveal is, they smoke a joint, which is something they actually do. It's a kazoo bong. It's pretty funny. They take a toke, and then there's a big puff of smoke. I could almost imagine right after that puff of smoke, you go back to the lady's house where all of Frank's friends have been purchased and brought back to, and then that's when they realize, and then cut back to Frank being like, "Wait a minute, that's what they do to us." And they'd be like, "Yep, that's what they do." Whereas the way they turned out in this film, I feel like it wasn't nearly as put out. It's a minor thing. I feel like either way, the pacing was very good. I felt like I was always kept on tip of my feet. This wasn't the kind of film that made me want to laugh hard all the time. I was mostly just appreciating it, and in the parts that did make me laugh, I did genuinely laugh. I don't want to spoil too much. All I can say is, at some point, how is the food going to get their comeuppance by the end of this film? How they do is an interesting twist that actually makes a lot of sense the more you think about it, but don't think too hard about it. Because, let's just say, if you were intoxicated with some illegal substances, would you start imagining things coming to life? Yeah, let's go on that track. And the way they do it is very shocking. And I guess what I said earlier about something being very blatant and blunt, I felt like when that realization came about, that was very blatant. And the way it turned out into the film, I thought was done pretty well. And then by the end of the film, when the food needs to, revolt, which eventually does happen, but I won't tell you how, it does feel genuine and it does feel building up. And in some ways, if you look at it through a different lens, it's almost as if that last scene in the movie could have been a horror movie. I won't say how, but it could have been a really dark horror movie under different consequences than how it turned out. But either way, still found it very funny. One of my favorite characters in the film I didn't really get the chance to talk about was a douchebag, or just a douche, played by Nick Kroll. And he's the villain of the film. And before I got a chance to see this film, I only heard about this character. And I always had this impression that he was a stereotypical villain, He's got like an, villainous voice, something we've seen in film before. What I was surprised about was the fact that they got this character to actually act like a Jersey Shore douchebag. And he's all about the GTL, except he looks like a douchebag. He is a douchebag, quite literally and figuratively. And as the movie progresses, he's got this little arc and a really great running gag that I won't spoil, but all I'll say is that it makes fun of the fact that movies like this utilize a lot of puns. I think this could have been a good stab towards like Cloudy 2 and how many puns that movie made. But either way, there's a great progression of his character where he gets more roided up and he reminds you of a stereotypical douchebag. And the way that was played off was good. In fact, his design reminded me a lot of a miniature version of the air conditioner from the Brave Little Toaster, which I don't know if this is intentional or not, but either way, a very creative decision to have gone forward with his design. I know I said that this is one of my favorite animated films of this year. Is it the best one that I've seen? I don't think so, but I do think that this film is going to be making a mark on the time this is coming out. I feel like people are going to be talking about this film for years to come, not only because it has a lot of raunch. And when I talk about the ending of this film being kind of like a horror movie, I haven't even gotten to the part after the ending, which I'm just going to say is flat out NSFW, NC-17. How they got away with putting this on the screen is anybody's guess. It was like watching This Is the End when you saw Satan's penis. That's how raunchy it was, and maybe even a little bit further than that. But I do think that not only will people be talking about this for years to come, but this was an R-rated movie that did something, an R-rated animated film that did something that felt useful, which was the fact that they had a good story. People go to the Looney Tunes as being good humor for mostly adults because not like the Chuck Jones shorts didn't really utilize mostly slapstick. Other than the slapstick, you had just clever dialogue. That's why the Duck Season Rap Season shorts are such great, has such great dialogue and great humor and great timing and great pacing that I feel like it's funnier for adults than it was for kids. And this movie did utilize that, and it dealt with a theme of religion, which didn't really smack religion in the face, but dealt with the fact that religion can, and it's, and how crazy it can be, but it also did that for atheism as well. And it did have a good story, a good moral, which is, if you know something is wrong, you can pursue it, believe in it, just don't be a dick about it. That's basically what the moral to this film is. It's a funny moral, but it's also kind of true, because in this day and age where we have so many social justice warriors always trying to say what is right and be politically correct, they're right and they got a good cause, but after a while, you got to ask yourself, come on, there's a way you can go about doing that without pushing your agenda in a way that makes you look insecure. And it's funny that this movie did that. A movie with stereotypes and a lot of politically incorrect characters, to pull that message off actually makes it more effective. Which is why I think this will be a kind of movie that people will look back and watch again. I did walk out of the theater and I did catch like 5 kids who had to have been teenagers looking at each other being like, I don't think I'm going to be watching that movie ever again. That kid's full of shit. He is going to totally watch this movie again. I know he will, because there's no way you can go out of that saying, you know what, maybe I'm going to let that sit a little bit, but I feel like as much as I don't want to watch it, I think I want to watch it again. That's what this movie did. And for a lot of people, this was a very, very big deal. Sausage Party, full recommendation. I think you should check it out. But please, for the love of God, do not take your kids to see this. I know for a fact, totally, a lot of kids are going to want to see this because I was in that position when I was like 6 years old. I wanted to see South Park bigger, longer, and uncut. I didn't get to see it, but you know what? I was in that position where I saw this movie. I was like, I know it's going to be dirty and I know it's going to be raunchy, but I totally want to watch it. And yeah. This is a similar type of thing. Anyways, full recommendation. Comment and let me know what you think about this movie. I thought it was great. A couple things kind of bothered me, but either way, I do think that this is a very entertaining film with a good message and a good moral and a lot of raunch. Comment to let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. I'm Joey T. Thanks for watching this voiceover vlog on Sausage Party. Take care.